unto God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and was with me in the way which I went.
Because he knew that there was a God that sustained him in his midnight hour. And as for men, we should also understand, the one in which you should go to is God. Yeah, your wife is there. I'm not saying you don't run things past your wife. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that you need to look to God first. Because you are the one that everybody else should be dependent on. So when it comes to those hard times, if you cry, she crying, what we going to do? And you crying, I don't know, we in trouble. We in trouble. He said, let us rise and go up to Bethel, and I will make there an altar unto God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and was with me in the way which I went. Verse 4.
And they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hands, and all the earrings which were in their ears. And Jacob hid them under the cloak which was by Shechem.
Let's go to Psalms, the 101st division. Psalms 101. So we've seen the example of Abraham, we've seen the example of Joshua, we've seen the example of the patriarch Jacob. Let's look at David, who had a heart like God. Let's see what he said in this Psalm of David. This is Psalms 101 and verse 1. When you're ready, brother, go ahead.
And I will sing of the mercy and judgments unto thee, O Lord, will I sing. I will behave myself wisely in a perfect way.
Go ahead.
O when wilt thou come unto me? I will walk within my house with a perfect heart.
So you see what he's saying? He said, I will behave myself wisely in a perfect way. O when wilt thou come unto me? I will walk within my house with a perfect heart. This, when he says house, he's talking about his household. I'm going to walk uprightly. As a man, you are the example for your family. If you didn't know, your children, your sons, your daughter, and your wife, they're looking at you. They are looking at you. And so you have to be the example for them to look at, in addition to providing for them monetarily. In addition to giving spiritual direction, you have to walk uprightly. Let's go to Numbers, the 30th chapter. Here we see an example, again, of you being the spiritual head of a home. And it is clear today, when you look at the world today and what's accepted today, that this is largely misunderstood. This is not politically correct. It's a good thing. I don't care about that. This is Numbers, the 30th chapter, and let's pick it up at verse 1. Because here we see vows. And I'm going to point out something when it comes to vows that are made. Numbers 30 and 1. When you're ready, brother, go ahead.
And Moses spake unto the heads of the tribes concerning the children of Israel, saying, This is the thing which the Lord has commanded.
Go ahead.
If a man vow a vow unto the Lord, or swear an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceedeth out of his mouth. When a man makes a vow, the Bible talks about, don't be a fool to make a vow to God and not pay. You need to pay all that is due. When you make a vow, a man vow a vow unto the Lord, or swear an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceeded out of his mouth. That's why sometimes it might be wise to let your yea be yea and nay be nay. But let's keep reading. If a woman also vow a vow unto the Lord, and bind herself by a bond, being in her father's house in her youth. Now let's pay attention. And her father hear vow, and her bond wherewith she has bound her soul, and her father shall hold his peace at her, then all her vows shall stand. And every bond wherewith she has bound her soul shall stand. So now if a woman makes a vow unto the Lord in her father's house. Now it makes that point. Because when your father is your covering. A woman, in the Bible, a woman was to be covered by a man from cradle to grave. When you are in your father's house in your youth, you are covered by your father until when? Until you become a part of your husband's household. Then what? He is your covering. And he even had allotments for widows. We see that in the New Testament, where even the congregation would take care of those widows.
See, people say, well, that's misogynistic, that's this, that's that. Well, this is justice. But let's keep reading.
But if her father disallow her in the day that he hears not any of her vows or her bonds wherewith she has bound her soul shall stand. And the Lord shall forgive her, because her father disallowed her.
So think about this. Just showing you who the head of the household is. It is the man. Because if he hears the vow and he doesn't agree with the vow that she made, listen, she made the vow not to another person, she made it to the Lord. If he doesn't agree with the vow, he can disallow the vow in the day that he heard it, and the Lord will forgive her. It doesn't say the same thing about a man, letting you know who the spiritual head is. But if her father disallow her in the day that he heareth not any of her vows or of her bonds wherewith she hath bound, her soul shall stand, and the Lord shall forgive her, because her father disallowed her. What about if she's married? Let's keep reading. Verse 6.
And if she had at all an husband, when she vowed, or uttered aught out of her lips, wherewith she bound her soul, and her husband heard it, and held his peace at her in that day that he heard it, then her vow shall stand, and her husband and her bounds wherewith she had bound her soul shall stand. So
if her husband heard it, and in that day he held his peace, he didn't say anything about it, he didn't disallow it, she had to keep that vow. But what about if he didn't agree? What about, so we read about her father, what about her husband? Go ahead.
But if her husband disallow her on the day that he heard it, then he shall make her vow which she vowed, and that which she uttered from with her lips, within she bowed her soul, and none effect. And the Lord shall forgive her.
So he said, but if her husband disallowed her on the day that he heard it, then he shall make her vow which she vowed, and that which she uttered with her lips, with which she bound her soul, of none effect. And the Lord shall forgive her. He can disallow a vow that his wife made unto the Lord if he didn't agree with it in that day. That lets you know one thing. We are not on equal terms. There is no 50-50. We saw the divine order. It was the Father, the Son, it was man, and then it was woman. But then we also saw the responsibility of a man. This carries great responsibility and balance. So you are the spiritual head. You are responsible, even if she's doing something in this regard that you feel is inappropriate, you can disallow it. The same is not said for a man. Let's go to Job. You had a responsibility over your household, brothers. Job 1. And I know you've been told something different, or seen something different, but the Bible remains true. Job 1, and let's pick it up at verse 1, because here we're going to see the example of a man who is the spiritual head of his home. This is Job 1, and we'll pick it up at verse 1. When you're ready, go ahead.
There was a man in the land of Uz, whose name was Job. And that man was perfect and upright, and one that feared God, and eschewed evil. So Job feared God, he reverenced God, and he hated evil. This was an upright man. Verse 2. And there was born unto him 7 sons and 3 daughters.
So he had 7 sons and 3 daughters. He had 10 children. Let's keep reading.
His substance also was 7,000 sheep, and 3,000 camels, and 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 she-asses, and a very great household. So that this man was the greatest of all men of the East.
Go ahead.
And his sons went out and feasted in their houses, every one his day, and sent and called for their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. So now
the children are getting together and they're feasting in their houses, every one his day, and sent and called for their 3 sisters to eat and to drink with them. Verse 5, because what did Job do? Go ahead.
And it was so, when the days of their feasting were gone about, that Job sent and sacrificed them, and sanctified them,
That's okay. Go ahead.
And rose up early in the morning, and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, it may be that my sons have sinned, and cursed God in their hearts. Thus did Job continue. So now listen to what Job did. It says, and it was so when the days of their feasting was gone about, that Job sent and sanctified them, and rose up early in the morning and offered burnt offerings. He offered to the Lord. He said, to the number of them all, for all of his children.
Listen to what he says. For Job said, it may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus did Job continually. So Job took of his substance, of his animals, and sacrificed them for all his children continually for what they may have thought in their minds. Not what they uttered out of their lips. But rather, he was going, standing in the gap, making sacrifices for his children as the spiritual head, because it may be perhaps that one of them had a bad thought about God. That's when you know you're the spiritual head. But now let's pick it up in Deuteronomy 4. Because here we see what a man is to do. You are the spiritual head of your home. Deuteronomy 4, and let's pick it up at verse 5. Deuteronomy 4 and verse 5, here we see this charge given by Moses to the children of Israel. What did he say?
Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me, that ye should do so in the land whither ye go to possess it.
Go ahead.
Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations.
So what is your wisdom and your understanding? The laws, statutes, commandments, ordinances, judgments that he gave unto this people. He gave one people the lively oracles of God. He tells you in one place, only you are known of all the nations of the earth, therefore I will punish you for all your iniquity. What advantage doth have the Jew or prophet is their circumcision, much chiefly in every way, for unto them were committed the oracles of God. Let's keep reading.
Which shall hear all the statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people.
See, we've thrown that away. We've thrown that away. So when you throw away the law, statutes, and commandments, you throw away Torah, you've thrown away wisdom. Because Torah, that's the thoughts of an omniscient God. But let's keep reading.
For what nation is there so great, whose has God so nigh unto them, as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for?
No nation like that. Israel is, if you didn't know, Israel is a black people that have been scattered into slavery all over the world. How did that happen? Because they went astray from their God. But he said, for what nation is there so great who hath God so nigh unto them, as Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for? Go ahead.
And what nation is there so great that has statutes and judgments, so righteousness as all the law, which I set before you this day?
None. Go ahead.
Only take heed to thyself and keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget these things which thine eyes have seen, lest thy depart from thine heart all the days of thy life.
But what?
But teach them thy sons and thy sons' sons.
So you see what's commanded in Torah for men to do? What do you have to do? You have to teach your sons Torah. You have to teach your sons the laws, the statutes, the commandments of God. Like the brother right here, he's got his 2 sons with him, right? Yes, you got your son with you because that's what you're supposed to do. He said, teach them thy sons and thy sons' sons. From generation to generation to generation. So that they would grow up and be men and they would be able to lead their household spiritually and teach their sons. Let's go to Proverbs 22. And see, when you lead them in the right direction, when you are the spiritual head, they're going to go and become, more than likely, righteous adults. This is Proverbs 22 and verse 6. Proverbs 22 and 6. One verse here, we've probably all heard this verse before. And not really understood what it was talking about. Proverbs 22 and 6. When you're ready, brother, go ahead.
Train up a child in the way he should go.
What should you train him up in? The laws, the statutes, the commandments of God. That's what you're training him up in. Train up a child in the way he should go. That's why it tells you in Timothy, and that from a child that has known the holy scriptures, which are able to make thee wise unto salvation. Train up a child in the way he should go, and what?
And when he is old, he will not depart.
Because he's got something to hold on to. He's got something to direct his feet. He has a lamp, as David said, to guide his steps in this life. Let's go back to Genesis 2. Genesis 2. So that's what a man should do. What is a man? Before you had a woman, you had God and you had purpose. And when you get a woman, what are you to do? You are to provide monetarily and you are to provide spiritual direction for your household. That's what, here we're talking about the order in the familial unit. So what is the woman to do? Well, first of all, let's find out what a woman is. This is Genesis 2, and pick it up at verse 18. Genesis 2 and verse 18. And when you're ready, brother, go ahead.
And the Lord God said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make him and help meet for him.
So the woman is what? And help meet for a man. That is why you were created. Now, regardless of what Susan B. Anthony may have said, regardless of what a radical feminist may have told you, regardless of what OWN or Oxygen or Oprah or whatever anybody said, the Bible is true. And the Lord God said, it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make an help meet for him. You ought to be a man's help meet. That's what it is. Now let's go down a little bit. Let's go to verse 22. And when you're ready, brother, go ahead. 21, go ahead.
And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man.
So now you take it from a man. You can't sit there and say you don't need a man. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. Your purpose is intertwined within a man. Because why? Because you were made to be the helpmeet for a man. Again, I know it's not politically correct. It's good. I don't care about that. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. Now, let's go to 1 Corinthians. Because the same thing is true in the New Testament. Nothing has changed. But we've gone away from what has been given in the Word, and that's why you have so much chaos. It seems like men and women are at war with one another. Why? Because neither one knows what they're supposed to be doing. Well, how are you supposed to know? It's right here in the book.